I forgot my glasses. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I can see now. I thought I'd be invincible all my life. Because all my family had glasses, but I didn't. And now I can't read without, these are just reading glasses. I kind of like dreaded the day that I would actually go to an eye doctor, or you'd probably say I would need glasses or something. But all right. The name of this portion, as you have on your notes there, I hope you all have a copy, is called TOL'DOT. That's the name of this week's portion. And it means generations. Okay, descendants. Okay, and its root word is yalad, which means to bear, bring forth, to travail. Okay, so I'm going to basically go over this very fast. Okay, so let's look at Genesis 25:19. Genesis 25:19. And these are the descendants of Yitz'chak, Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Yitz'chak, and Yitz'chak was at the age of 40 years when he took Riv'kah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Padan Aram, sister of Lavan, the Aramean, for himself as a wife. Okay, so he was 40 when he took a wife. Okay, note that. Okay, remember what we talked about last week with Chaye Sarah. That was Chaye Sarah last week. We talked about 40, 4, 14, and how it has to do with the wedding. 4 is a number that has to do with marriage. Okay, and it has to do with the New Jerusalem. It's a square. It's the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle, in the temples. It's the number 4. It's also the number of testing, because it's through the testing that we become the bride that we're supposed to be. So all this 40 it has to do with marriage. Well, what happened on the 4th day? Okay, now what I say is 4th day is every day is like 1,000 years. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Okay, Yeshua came to the earth to die on a cross right at the end of the 4th day. Okay? So, in the year 4000, some believe it was exactly at the point of his death. So, at 30 Common Era, 0030. Okay? We're at 2019 right now. Okay? So, in actually 20, right? So in 10 years, we'll be exactly at the 2,000-year mark since Yeshua went to the cross. If you add 2,000 to 4,000, that's 6,000. Could the Lord be coming in about 10 years? Perhaps. We don't know. We do know the day and the hour. We don't know the year. Okay? Just to reiterate what I said last week. Okay? So 40 has to do with the wedding. Well, what was created on the 4th day? When God created the heavens and the earth, remember? On the 4th day, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Well, what does the sun and the moon represent? In the Bible, the sun represents Messiah. The moon represents the believers, the bride of Messiah. And God has a bride. Okay? Messiah came to get a bride. Okay, so the bride being of the Jews who believe in him and of the non-Jews who believe in him. So Yitz'chak marries Riv'kah at 40 years old. Okay, remember, everything about Sarah has to do with the New Jerusalem and has to do with the hope. So here's the son of Sarah. But something unusual happened. Yitz'chak Yitz'chak, at verse 21, entreated Yehovah opposite his wife because barren was she, to allow himself to be entreated. God allowed himself to be entreated by him. Did Yehovah, and conceived in Riv'kah his wife. Struggled did the children within her, and she said, "Is so, why am I like this? Why am I having such a struggle within my body? What is going on with these two babies that they're fighting inside of me?" And he said, "Two nations are in your womb. Two kingdoms from the inside shall be separated. One kingdom more than the other kingdom will be mighty, and the elder shall serve the younger." Completed were her days to give birth, and indeed there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, entirely like a mantle, and is hairy. So they called his name Esav. After that emerged his brother with his hand grasping onto the heel of Esav, and he called his name Yaakov, and Yitz'chak was the age of 60 years when she bore them. Okay, again, an important number. What is going to happen when we reach the year 6000? There is going to be a wonderful kingdom coming, but it's going to come in pain. It's going to come with the enemies of Israel and the enemies of righteousness and the enemy, Satan, trying to control the world. It's like two children. One is going to be the beautiful kingdom, and the other is going to be the horrible time that's going to precede that beautiful kingdom. So here, just like 60, two children are born. One of them is going to be a cause of much pain and sorrow. And the other one is going to be a cause of great joy and Israel. Okay, coming about. One child, later his name will be changed from Esav to Rome. Edom, which is where the Hebrew word for Rome. Everything from Rome is bad. All the false gods, all the paganism, all their religion is bad. There's nothing good out of Rome, including the Vatican. And I won't go into more detail than that. Every teaching that has come out of the Vatican, that has come into the church, is from Rome. There's a battle between Rome and Israel, Jacob. And it started here. It started at the birth of these two children. Now it's interesting, but the word for ratzat, word for struggle, that the children within her is ratzats. There's two tzadis there. You all see in your notes at the bottom of page 1? There's two, or maybe you guys might have a different one. Is it at the bottom of page 1 where it says ratzats? Can you see it?
Yes.
Page 1, Josh. Okay. Go back up. I think I got the shorter version right here. But anyhow, go down a little bit. Trying to find where that word's at. It should be there. Okay, all right. Well, I don't know where it's at. I have a couple of versions of this out there.
It's on page 4, guys.
Yeah, page 4 of your notes, sorry. Okay. Ratzatz, it means to crush or oppress. Okay? That tzadi in the Hebrew is where we get the word righteous from. If you are righteous, you are a tzaddik. Bless you. So you are a tzaddik, a righteous person. Okay? It's a righteous and upright person. A righteous person often goes through many distresses. That is probably why the Hebrew word for distress also begins with a tzadi. Okay? It's the word sar. Have you ever heard of the word sar? Bain hamsarim. We deal with it in the summer, the troubling time. Sar. It literally begins. It's trouble, distress. The righteous they're righteous, but they also go through distress. So you could say the word for struggle is a righteous man distressed. That's another way to put it, because there's two tzadis in the name for struggle. Okay, it should be. Well, let me see some of your.
Mine is on page 3.
Page 3? Okay, page 3. I created a smaller version and a bigger version because the big version is like 16 pages. So some of you might have the big version and some of you might have the smaller one.
Yeah, I think the one I'm putting up on the screen is.
Like hers is at the bottom of page 1, mine is at the bottom of page 3.
I think the big one is, the short one is the one where it's on page 1. Okay, I'm sorry about that, okay? But I just wanted to just go over that. Okay, so if you're walking on a narrow path, Yeshua said, strive to enter the narrow path. You know what the word for narrow path is? Tsar. Trouble. He said, struggle to enter the troubled path. Because the other path leads to destruction. You might say, well, that's insane. Why would God say to enter the troubling path? Not on purpose that you enter the troubling path. You say, I want to walk as the righteous walk. I want to live as a righteous man lives. So I'm going to walk no matter what comes at me. I am going to keep walking with him. That's what it is. It's like the yellow brick road. You never know what's going to come along that road, but it's going to lead to an emerald palace. Okay, so it's like, but you never know. There's witches, there's evil, there's fire, there's all sorts of things that can happen along that road. But you walk it. You walk that path. Because that's the path that's going to lead you to life. Yeshua said, walk that narrow path. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Let's take the story of the twins a second. Inside of her, there was a battle going on. Inside of each of us, there's a battle going on. We want to live righteous. We want to live good. But we also have this side of us that wants to splurge ourselves with the world. Wants all the good, all the wonders, all the beautiful things. We also want peace. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? I'm just saying that you got to recognize that this battle, this flesh, is in opposition to God. But we have inside of us a spirit that is bringing us life and abundance and goodness. That's the battle we have. So like Riv'kah, like Rebecca had, we have a battle. And what are we bearing? We're bearing 2 children. But which one's stronger? Is the righteous one stronger, the good one, or the bad one stronger? And we have to put down our thoughts. We have to, bring every thought captive. And right now, I don't know if you noticed, everybody's out there shopping, and they're all getting the best deals, and they're all caught up in what their eyes want. It is totally flesh. It is totally Esav. It's totally Edom and Rome out there. But the way of God is, what do we need for now? Let's trust in God for what we need. I wanted to get a huge TV. And I said, no, reality is, no, we have more important things. But that's an incredible deal. we gotta say, no, we need something more important than that. But it's the battle. That's a part of it. It's just more like it's now out there. Okay? All right, so it's very interesting, but what would happen is Esau liked to hunt. He liked to fill his flesh. And then Jacob was a mild man. He just liked taking care of the sheep. He was a shepherd. So one day, Jacob was serving some red lentils. Okay, and there were red lentils, a red lentil stew. Tastes good, doesn't it? Pretty good. Okay? And Esau came in from hunting, and he was hungry. So he saw the red lentil. He said, give me some of that. Literally, he said it like that. Let me have some, pour it into me. In other words, let me feed my flesh. He said, no, I'll tell you what. You want some? Fine. Then I want you to sell me your right as firstborn. And he probably didn't say it like that, but it was like that. sell me every blessing that you have of the firstborn rights, and I'll give you the food. And he says, well, what do I care about it? He spurned his birthright. He spurned his authority that God gives. He spurned God for a little bit of stew of lentils, red lentils. You know what? They're pretty good, but not worth giving everything up for. Okay? Okay, so you know, he first did that, and then later, Yaakov, I'm sorry, not Yaakov, Yitz'chak, when he got older, he said, listen, I like the game. I like the meat. I like Esav. He was a very fleshy man, Yitz'chak. And he said, why don't you, he sends his son, his older son, Esav, out. And you go, why don't you get me some meat, and I'm going to bless you. So he goes and gets meat, and he prepares it the way his father liked. But in the meantime, his wife Riv'kah overheard, and she got Jacob to get an animal. She prepared it the way her husband liked it, and then they had prepared it quicker while Esau was out hunting. Okay, so he comes in and he tells his son Yaakov, put on a little hairy garment so that Yitz'chak would be fooled in thinking that you're Esau. Now, the question is, did he sin by pretending to be Esau? His mother was telling him to do this. The thing is yes and no. He was still deceiving his father, yes, but he had the right to the name Esau because Esau gave him the right to his name. So he wasn't sinning, but he wasn't. You understand? So he deceived his father into thinking he was his son, and the blessing went to Yaakov, not to Esau. Okay? And Esau will be told he had to serve his brother. Well, that was prophesied. It was prophesied to Riv'kah while the babies were in her womb, that the older will serve the younger. So who was more of the spiritual leadership in this family? It was Riv'kah. It was Rebekah. Because of the evil that was being done, because their son Esau married Hittites. Now in Hebrew, the word Hittites, a Hitti, it literally means terrorists. Okay, so that Esau was just marrying into the whole land and taking foreign wives, and he was doing everything to grieve the parents. Okay, so it would end up that Esau was so angry that his blessing was stolen now that he threatened to kill his brother, so his brother was sent away. Okay, I'm telling you the very brief synopsis of the whole thing. Okay, so now it's in this portion that God said, because Abraham, look in Genesis 26:5, and I don't know which page this is on your notes, but Genesis 26:5, it says in there in bold, reading Bereshit 26:5. So Genesis 26:5. Let's just look at that, and we'll finish with that. Okay, God, after he started, when Jacob was on his way, this word came to him from the Father. Because Abraham listened to my voice, he observed my safeguards, my commandments, my decrees, and my teachings. Yitz'chak settled in Gerar. I'm sorry, I'm off on my timing. It's when Isaac moved. Yitz'chak settled in Gerar. When they asked the men of the place concerning his wife, he said, my sister is she. I don't want to get into all the details about this, but he had to move once here. He had to move before all this happened with Jacob. And when he moved, God reiterated, as he did to Abraham, the promises to Yitz'chak, his son. Okay, and in this he said, because all this blessing is going to come upon you. Why? because Abraham listened to my voice. He observed my appointed time. Now in Hebrew it says my safeguards. Actually it means appointed times. Shamar, it means he was watchful of the times of God. He followed my commandments, my decrees, and my Torah. Before there was a Torah. So this blessing is going to come upon you because Abraham did this. Okay, and then the whole thing happened with Riv'kah. And let me just tell you one more thing. The Philistines like to fill in the what do you call it? The water things. What are they called? The wells, thank you. They like to fill in the wells. They like to stop the water. And Abraham kept digging for wells, and his son redug those wells. Yes, Josh?
They muddy the water.
Yeah, they muddy the water, but they completely filled it in. They cut off the flow of water. You know, today we have people, they call themselves Palestinians, and what they do is they want that name. Well, they want that name of the Philistines. The Philistines were not good people. They were evil people. And if they want that name, then they get the trouble that God brought to the Philistines. They get the trouble brought to them. Okay, but the reality is that this spirit, this Avimelech, okay, the one who led the Philistines, he kept doing the same thing over and over and over again, stopping up the wells. There's a whole prophecy here in the redigging of these wells, that Yitz'chak is going to redig these wells. Okay, but there's much more in here for you to see. Okay, about the names of the wells, but I'm not going to get into that. Okay, but there's a demonic spirit among the Philistines. They were the worst enemy Israel ever had. But I'm going to tell you something. That, you know, when Rome, and here is Esav, when Rome destroyed the temple, the second temple, they renamed the whole state of Israel, or the whole country of Israel, Philistina, to insult Israel. And the Jews were not permitted back to Jerusalem or anywhere in Israel. To insult them, they renamed it Philistina. And in the times when Israel became a nation again, it was called Palestina, but that's just an English way of saying Philistina. There is no connection of these Arab people that were living there to that land. They do not belong there. They were Jordanian Arabs placed there to stop Israel from being there. But anyhow, that's what I want to finish with in that. There's the whole deception. Rome coming to be in the form of Esav is in this portion. And you also have Jacob going and getting to a place where he's going to go off to the place where his family was, and he's going to build the house of Israel outside of the land. Outside of the land. And we're going to read about that next week. We'll get into that next week. Did you all follow okay? Okay, now your other set of notes on the origin of Christmas. 1. Okay, I will be very nice, I promise. In fact, we will read some scriptures and we'll read right off of the notes, okay? I know this is going to be difficult for many to hear, but I ask you, if you love truth, know what will set you free. Remember, the truth is what sets us free. Look and study and see before you get offended. On December 25th, many get excited about traditions of observing the birth of Yeshua, Jesus, on this date. So the very first thing you need to know is the real date of his birth. Now, last week I taught you the real date of his birth. And some people have suggested, and Jonathan Kahn teaches wrong on this. It's the only teaching that he's done wrong completely is on the birth of Yeshua. I was not going to mention that, but it was brought up. Okay, but it's not correct, his teaching on the birth of Yeshua. But everything else he teaches is right on. Okay. Deuteronomy 12, 29 to 32. The name of this teaching is called Origins of Christmas 1. Deuteronomy 12, 29 to 32. When Jehovah your God cuts off before you the nations which you are going to dispossess, and you dispossess them and dwell in their land, beware that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods, that I also may do likewise? You shall not behave thus toward the Lord, toward Jehovah your God, for every abominable act which Jehovah hates they have done for their gods. For they even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, you shall be careful to do. You shall not add to nor take away from it. Jeremiah 16, 19 to 21. Jeremiah 16, 19 to 21. O Lord, my strength and my stronghold, and my refuge in the day of distress. For you the nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited nothing but falsehood, futility, and things of no profit. Therefore, behold, I am going to make them now. This time I will make them know. This time I will make them know my power and my might, and they shall know that my name is Yehovah. When God comes to destroy the earth in the day of the Lord, He's going to destroy them because of their futility, because of the falseness. And they are all the nations, and every person is going to know that they're going to all say this: our fathers have inherited nothing but falsehood, futility, and things of no profit. Okay, this has got to be our heart. We've got to throw away everything that is futile, everything that is false. Zechariah 9, 12 to 17. Now, I read this last week, but I'm reading this again for a reason. Because it's the battle that is taking place. We have now entered into the month of Kislev. It's the month of warfare. And there is a lot of warfare that's going to come against you if you stand for the truth. And guess what? We're not supposed to sit by and let everybody stay in their darkness. We're supposed to do something, and this is what we're supposed to do. Zechariah 9, 12, starting verse 12. From 12 to 17. Return to the stronghold, O prisoners who had no hope. This very day I am declaring that I will restore double to you. For I will bend the Jews, I will bend Judah as my bow. Okay? And I will fill the bow with Ephraim, which represents all of Israel. And I will stir up your sons. Who? The sons of Israel and the sons of Judah. I will stir up your sons, O Zion, against your sons, O Greece. And I will make you like a warrior's sword. Okay, so I want you to know that we Jews and we of Israel are like a bow with an arrow. And the arrow is Israel. The ways of God is Israel. And we are shooting it at the Greeks. This is our season. This is the season. We are not purposely trying to destroy believers. We're destroying the lies. That is the truth of the Jews out against the false ways of the Greeks. That is what we were created for. That is what we're here for. But I'm going to do it with compassion, because I know people who don't do it with compassion. Because you don't know. A lot of us don't know the truth. You know, I've learned some things this year that I didn't know about Christmas. And we're going to talk about it. Now read on. And Jehovah will appear over them, and his arrows will go forth like lightning. So, in other words, here's Judah and Israel, and they're already going at them, and now comes the Lord, and he's going to go at them. When the kingdom comes, he is going at them. And the Lord Jehovah will blow the shofar, and will march in the storm winds of the south. And Jehovah of hosts will defend them and defend Israel and Jews. And they will devour and trample on the slingstones, and they will drink and be boisterous as with wine, and they will be filled with the sacrificial basin. drenched like the corners of the altar. And Jehovah their God will save them in that day as a flock of his people, and they are as the stones of a crown, sparkling in his hands. For what comeliness and beauty will be theirs. Grain will make the young men flourish, and the new wine the virgins. Okay? In other words, he is going to be with those that do this fight, that become the bow and arrow. We're going to talk more about the bow and arrow also close to Hanukkah. There's a whole teaching I'm working on about the bow and the arrow. That started with Noah. Okay, remember with the bow. God set his bow up there at the covenant he made with the entire earth for a reason, to say, I'm ready. I'm going to go after every lie. I destroyed the earth with a flood, and I'm going to go after every lie. You know, so he has the bow ready. It's a time of war. Okay. Looking at your notes, Roman churchmen tended to favor the Mithraic winter solstice festival. So let's start talking about what goes on, what used to go on December 25th and around that time. It's a winter solstice festival of the Mithraites called Dies Natalis, I'm probably saying this wrong, Natalis Solis Invictus, the birthday of the unconquered sun. Trappings such as Yule logs, gifts, lights, mistletoe, holly, carols, feasts, and processions were altogether pagan. They were drawn from worship of the goddess as mother of the divine child. Christmas trees evolved from the I'm using Spanish words. Pine silva, pine groves attached to the temples of the Great Mother. On the night before the holy day, Roman priests called dentrophori, or tree bearers, cut one of the sacred pines, decorated it, and carried it to the temple to receive the effigy of Attis. Figures and fetishes attached to trees in later centuries seem to have represented a whole pantheon of pagan deities on the world tree. How has it infiltrated the church? And let's go back further. A term widely used and not well understood is Christmas. The name for the celebration of Messiah's birth is actually formed from a combination of two words, Christ and Mass. Christ is a Greek word for Messiah, but where does Mass come from? The Mass is about the continual death of Christ, not his birth. In ancient Babylon, there was an abomination known as the Mass ritual. When it became a doctrine of the Catholic Church, it was thought to be the literal re-sacrificing of Messiah, clearly against Scripture, since the Messiah's one-time death was a final and absolute propitiation for all sins. And that's in Hebrews 9:25-28. So how ironic that every time someone wishes a Merry Christmas, thinking to themselves that they are speaking of his birth, they are actually making mention of the abominable act of the Mass ritual of the Catholic Church. It is as if the whole world was going around celebrating a day of gift-giving and festivity. They call it Keep God Dead Day. Satan was defeated at the death and resurrection of Messiah, but he is such a sorry loser. So, he wants to keep Messiah dead. Satan wants to keep Messiah dead with his perpetual re-sacrifices through the Mass ritual. And now the whole world refers to Messiah's birth by mention of his perpetual death. How well Satan has deceived the whole world. Maybe this is why everyone gives gifts to one another after the death of the two witnesses in the book of Revelation. Remember, they killed the two witnesses, and what do? They all do Christmas over each other. They all give gifts to one another, and it's a big celebration until 3 days later they resurrect. And then all hell breaks loose. That's really when the Great Tribulation begins. But basically, in Revelation 12:9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm ruining Christmas for you. Okay? But the reality is, every time you say Merry Christmas, you're talking about the death of Messiah. For your information. Okay? So please, be nice to your family. They might not know this, okay? Just be cordial and say, Happy Messiah, or Happy Messiah's birth. If you don't want to say Merry Christmas, and they come up to you and your family says Merry Christmas, just say Happy Messiah's birth. Even though we know that it wasn't his birth, to be cordial and nice, okay? And if they ask you, why are you saying it like that? You ask them, do you really want to know? Because it's going to hurt your idea of Christmas. And they'll either say, okay, no, I don't want to know. Or they might say, okay, tell me. And then you get a chance to share it with them. And they might not like you the rest of the day, but at least they'll have given you the opportunity to share it. Yes?
In the schools,
Yeah.
we've been told if we tell them that Santa Claus isn't real, we can be fired.
Okay, well, just don't acknowledge Santa Claus, that's all. Just don't even acknowledge it. Whatever you do, avoid the conversation. In your case, avoid the conversation. If someone says anything about Santa Claus to you, you just say, no comment, period. That way you're covered.
I plead the fifth.
What?
What?
I plead the fifth.
We're not in like the Supreme Court or something. Okay, anyhow. Okay, by the way, much of this information I'm getting is from my own study and with the help of Ian Michaels, okay? So, he makes me look like nothing in his war against this stuff. Okay, but he's nicer, okay, these days. Okay, another term not well understood is holiday. Holiday, remember that song? Webster's New Universal Unabridged Dictionary defines holiday as a religious festival, a holy day. Christmas is indeed a religious festival, one in which a deity is honored. But history shows that long before the term Christmas ever came about, a deity has been honored for this season for literally thousands of years. The winter solstice celebration began shortly after the flood of Noah, when the Babylonian Empire came into existence. The winter solstice held great importance to pagans because of the prominence of the sun as a source of all life. As winter came on, days got shorter and nights got longer. To the pagan, this meant that the sun was dying. At the solstice, the sun seemed to be reborn as the days began to get longer again. After the killing of Nimrod, Semiramis, his mother widow, now this is the story, the pagan story. The killing of Nimrod, Semiramis, also another term for Nimrod, Semiramis, the mother of Nimrod, his mother or widow declared her dead son or husband to be a sun god. Now, what do you mean? What am I saying here? A son was also the husband. That's pagan rituals. Incest is all over pagan rituals. Okay. She also became mysteriously pregnant, claiming that the baby in her womb was Nimrod reincarnated, as well as the promised seed of the woman, mentioned, making reference to the well-known promise given to Adam and Eve that a Redeemer would be born to save mankind from the plight of humanity since the fall of Eden. And that's from Genesis 3:15, a promise of a son. But that's the right one. That represents Messiah. The claim, of course, made her the mother of God, a term that is now assigned by the Catholic Church to Miriam, or Mary, the mother of Yeshua, or Jesus. Okay. Now, this is from a book called The Two Babylons by Reverend Alexander Hislop. In life, her husband had been honored as a hero. In death, she will have him worshipped as a god. Yes, as a woman's promised seed, Zoroaster, who was destined to bruise the serpent's head. See, they all knew. All the pagans knew about this stuff that happened in Genesis. Okay, Zoroaster, by the way, happens to be the religion of Persia. They're called the Zoroastrians. Did you know that? I'm not talking about the people who follow Islam over in Iran. I'm talking about the true Persians. Their religion was the Zoroastrians. They were followers of the Zoroastrian. It's also false gods. An ancient Babylonian fable states that there was once an old oak tree stump from which an evergreen sprouted forth. The oak stump represented Nimrod and the evergreen Tammuz. This is where we get the name Tammuz from. The Jewish fourth month is called Tammuz. I do not like using that. The Jews picked up Babylonian names from their Babylonian captivity for the months. The fourth month could just be called the fourth month, but it's called Tammuz. Okay, Tammuz means evergreen. Why did Semiramis choose this name for her incarnated Nimrod? The evergreen is a perfect representation of the sun that never dies, since it remains green throughout all seasons. Why do they like the evergreen? Because of its name. It doesn't stop being green. That's why it's called evergreen. Forever green. Evergreen. Okay? So they like it because it lives forever. It can't be killed. It can't die. So that's why they use evergreens primarily. Of course, today it's all fake. They use a lot of fake trees, but years ago it was real trees and it was evergreen. Okay. It represents the sun that never dies. So really, all this has to do with the winter solstice, which happens right around December 21st. It's not even December 25th, but this is when, at that solstice, that the sun begins to shine a little bit more, maybe like 1 minute each day, a little bit more, and as time goes on, it increases to like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 minutes as time goes on. That this is the other side where the sun is the day is at its longest, and then it begins to get shorter. It has nothing to do, it does have to do with death and resurrection, but it's connected to Yeshua, not as connected to a pagan myth. Okay. Top of page 3. From Nimrod, Tammuz derived Molech, Baal, Sol, as well as Saturn, also known as Chiun and Remphan. Saturn was honored by the Romans with a week-long festival at the end of December known as Saturnalia. Saturn was the Roman god of time and the harvest, which is why you can find him depicted with a skiff in his hand. He was the cruelest and most evil of all the pagan gods. Saturn demanded child sacrifice. Ancient Israel followed the practice of the pagans in honoring this deity with child sacrifice, when to them he was known as Molech or Chiun. Although Romans quit offering child sacrifices early on, gladiators spilled blood in the arena during the Saturnalia in December. Saturnalia was a religious celebration, and all understood that the blood spill was an offering to the god Saturn. And this is from the Roman antiquities. The gladiatorial shows were sacred to Saturn. From Osinius, the amphitheater claims its gladiators for itself when at the end of December they propitiate with their blood the sickle-bearing son of heaven, Saturn. The gladiators, this is from another book, the gladiators fought on the Saturnalia, and they did so for the purpose of appeasing and propitiating Saturn. Despite the blood sacrifices, this season was a time of feasting and merriment. All the beloved traditions of this modern holiday season came directly from Saturnalia. 12 days of Christmas are the days of gladiatorial bloodshed for Saturn. Treats left out for Santa derived from the offering made to Saturn. A decorated tree, Tammuz, with lights and balls. The lights on the tree were originally the burning fat from children sacrificed. The balls were originally the decapitated heads of children. Carolers were originally nude singers engaged in licentiousness in the streets. I'm sorry. There is nothing good about Christmas. Please be merciful to me as I'm sharing this. Don't get offended. I'm just telling you what has been already written long ago. What this is about. Hidden in plain view, the god Saturn is in the guise of 3 familiar characters to our modern times. Father Time, the Grim Reaper, and Santa Claus. Don't fear the Reaper. Don't fear the Reaper. In ancient depictions of Father Time, he can be seen as an old man with a clock and the ever-present skid. On one side is a line of children in sacks representing the years past, and on the other side, a line of children heavily shrouded representing the years to come. They are shrouded just as children were so long ago, so the parents would not know the exact moment when their child was thrown into the flames to Saturn. The Grim Reaper is merely another version of Father Time as he reaps the bleak harvest of souls. This is easy to see, but how is it that jolly old Nick is yet another guise for the bloodthirsty God who desires the sacrifice of our children. From the song Santa Claus is Coming to Town, he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Okay? As children, we come to learn that Santa has been around for a very long time. Santa knows everything about you at every moment of the day, just as he has known everything about your parents, grandparents, and every other ancestor for as long as anybody can remember. Santa is a huge figure in the imagination of every child who learns of him. He will reward you for good, or perhaps withhold reward if you're not good. What does even the little baby Jesus have on this guy? Santa has the goods, and every kid knows it. This is, of course, is tantamount to blasphemy, since these defying attributes belong to Jehovah and Jehovah alone. Satan, Saturn, has stolen the heart and soul of every child away from the honor and worship that is due the one and only true Elohim. Every time a parent puts in their thoughts the fantasy of a Santa Claus. Incidentally, Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary states that Old Nick is a name of the devil. Some say it's for the children. I say yes. It's always has been. And as long as people continue with Christmas Saturnalia, the souls of our children will continue to be sacrificed on the altar of Saturn. Spiritual blindness and deafness gets a stronghold when we are children. When we are adults, we then continue with the tradition, passing on our own spiritual blindness and deafness to the next generation. It's for the children! Come on! Yes, and now yet another generation who is blind and deaf when the message is given to come out of Babylon. Stop keeping Christmas. You've got to be crazy. Today's parents are yesterday's children, who in turn were sacrificed by their parents on the same altar. Without the intervening work of the Holy Spirit, none of us could ever break free from the strongholds built into our souls from the time we are children. Jeremiah 16:19, surely our fathers have inherited lies. We're almost done. Although many have come to know that paganism is at the heart of the season, many well-meaning Christians want to continue with their tradition of Christmas. Some will even go as far as to say that they know many of these things, yet they will tell you that they themselves are not worshiping any pagan gods. Okay, fine. As if somehow that makes their practices acceptable in Jehovah's sight. The problem with that logic is that pagans did not know the truth. Pagans were not a people called by the name of Jehovah. Christians cannot say the same. If ignorance is no excuse, how can full knowledge of the facts be an excuse? Acts 17:30. Truly then, having overlooked these times of ignorance, Elohim now commands all men everywhere to repent. When one knows better, they ought to do better. To know that Christmas was originally a pagan holiday and that all the rituals are identical to ancient pagan rites that honor Saturn, and yet to claim exemption from sin because one knows is extremely inconsistent. By honoring Saturn through practice, dishonor is given to Yehovah. Matthew 6:24. No one is able to serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will cleave to the one and despise the other. Saturn, of all the false deities, had the attributes most similar to Satan himself. Christmas is honor given to Saturn, an evil satanic deity. It is Satan's holiday in a very beautiful disguise. Imagine a king who didn't care where his food was coming from as long as it looked, smelled, and tasted delicious. And so his cook, who secretly hated the king, found roadkill and made it look, smell, and taste delicious. The king never knew. The king didn't want to know. He only cared that it looked, smelled, and tasted delicious. This is Christmas. Now, participation in pagan traditions honors Jehovah, the one we say we love and serve. Jehovah is calling for his people who are called by his name to come out of Babylon. The false religious system, Revelation 18:4. The time is now to return to him in all of our ways, choosing his paths, not ours. Thus says Jehovah, Jeremiah 6:16. Thus says Jehovah, stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old, the ancient, the eternal paths, where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for yourselves. But they said, we do not walk in it. Jeremiah 3:20-22. But indeed, as a wife betrays her husband, so have you betrayed me, O house of Israel, declares Jehovah. They have perverted their way, they have forgotten Jehovah their Elohim. Return, O backsliding children. 2 Corinthians 6:15-17. And what agreement has Messiah with Belial? Or what part does a believer have with an unbeliever? And what union has the dwelling place of Elohim with idols? For you are a dwelling place of a living Elohim, living God, as God has said, I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says Jehovah, and do not touch what is unclean, and I shall receive you. Revelation 18:4. Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. Abba, I ask, Lord, that as we are just beginning to get an understanding of what all this is, I wasn't raised in this, but I was raised in traditions that were not from you. But Lord, I just ask, Lord, that you would just help all of us to follow the traditions of the Word. Follow your appointed times. Learn your ways, Abba, in the spirit and the love, Abba. And forsake the ways of the world. Forsake the ways that maybe our parents and our grandparents taught us. Change us from within. Abba, we want to serve you. We want to walk with you. Abba, in the name of Yeshua. That's just part one. Next week, we'll break down all the individual elements, including the Christmas tree, and all that, yes.